there, this is Matt once again. Welcome back to another video. It's another paid request, this time from dear friend of mine, Efree. Thank you so much for that. And for those interested in requesting pretty much any type of videos, topics, reactions, reviews, re-reviews, random thoughts, whatever it may be, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. Now, this is a comparison video that my friend Efree wanted me to do. Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger versus The Rock and Vin Diesel. And he said not in terms of box office or such, but in terms of movie quality. Who's better and why. I mean, that's a done deal. I think most people would say Sly and Arnold were better than Vin Diesel and The Rock. At least the people I know. For various reasons. Number one, Stallone and Arnold, they were at the right place at the right time in the right era. They started off in the 70s and then they're getting to the 80s. The 80s, big guns, big muscles, Reaganomics, everything in between. The action movie heyday, R-rated, un-PC, escapism fun, bitches leave, explosions, Botson trying to take someone's head off, C4 tipped explosive arrows, machetes cutting arms off, stick around. The heyday of that. The Rock and Vin, sadly, were born a few decades too late. I think these are guys that definitely would have made a pretty fun career in the 80s to 90s, but just born, again, way too late. Because as the decades went on, those type of movies died down. And I'm not saying they went completely away, but they were not as much of a heyday as it was back then. And so you'll have writers that are not as adamant in writing those type of films because they think it's cheesy, or they think it's corny, or they think it's goofy, or that they think they're much more intelligent when they're not. They're just more boring, less fun. Some of these movies that Rock and Vin did were, okay, we supposedly are either going to be, I guess I shouldn't say more real, but if it's fun and goofy like The Rock does, there's really going to be winking at the camera like Jungle Cruise or San Andreas, or what was that movie, Rampage. And then Vin, some of the films he's doing, he thinks they're smarter than they actually are. And you look at stuff like The Last Witch Hunter and Babylon AD and Bloodshot, and you know, these are pieces of mediocre trash. And like I said, the choices are clear because Sly and Arnold have better track records in terms of the kind of movies I enjoy. I looked at their filmography, and I just see a lot more films of theirs that I truly loved. Are they against criticism? No, I've criticized Sly and a lot of his movies in the past 10 years. Same with Arnold. Killing Gunther was terrible. Bullet in the head. Was it Bullet to... The Stallone film, Bullet in My Brains, Doodle Cop, The Return, Revenge of Doodle Cop, whatever the fuck you want to call it, with Sun Kane. Sounds like a Mortal Kombat character, but he was with Stallone. That movie was mediocre. That should have starred Vin Diesel, might as well. But you looked at Stallone's track record. I looked at Rocky films. I looked at Nighthawks. I looked at Cobra. I looked at the Rambo films, the first four. And Cliffhanger, Demolition Man. Vin Diesel, he really has the closest he's made to is maybe Pitch Black. Fast Five and some of the Fast and Furious films are fun, but I would never put them up there with the Rambos and with Arnold Commando, the Running Man, those tops of the tops. There's fun escapism in some of the Fast and Furious movies, but for the majority of his film career, not so much with Vin. And The Rock, the closest is maybe The Rundown. I know I'm going all over the place because it's an easy, but yet it's not an easy answer. It's an easy answer where, yeah, Sly and Arnold definitely win because you got Predator, you got Rambo First Blood Part 2, you got Cliffhanger, you got Demolition Man, you got The Running Man. Vin has Bloodshot, Last Witch Hunter. The Rock has Jungle Cruise and fucking Black Adam. Of course, Sly and Arnold had the better filmography. As the movies went on, they went away from the one-man army movies and escapism and having to do with themselves or their body and their personality or their stature or their presence. While later on, it's either Vin get more of a family, more of a group together. Even Triple X became that, where the first Triple X was actually kind of fun, and I thought was the right direction for Vin. But then, Fast and Furious, it's all about family, 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 teams and teams and teams. Triple X Returns to End of Cage became another team movie. That was like a wannabe Fast and Furious movie. And it seems like Vin and The Rock are more chasing the fad. Now, you say and argue Stallone and such are doing that nowadays, but back in the day, they were still making the films they wanted to make, and whether it be a Cobra, whether it be a Lockup, whether it be Arnold being passionate for Total Recall, it just didn't feel like they were chasing the fad. What's the hip thing to do nowadays? And then that's one of the mistakes Stallone did later on doing films like Expendables 3, which did not work out. But what I mean by that with Vin and The Rock is you look at Vin Diesel and The Rock, they go, I gotta do a superhero movie. Because superhero movies are big, so we do Bloodshot, we do Black Adam. Didn't really work out that well for either one. The Rock, what can I get to? Okay, I'm going to get into G.I. Joe 2. I'm going to get into Fast and Furious since that's becoming very big. You know what? I'm going to do these big... I need superhero movies. It feels like just... I don't feel either a lot of passion projects or a lot of projects that really... their stature, I feel, as much as Stallone and Arnold. It's more like this is a safer bet, or they deem it a safer bet, especially The Rock. And like I said, I know I'm going all over the place because it's four people I'm trying to compare. And I look at Sly and Arnold, and I do think they're better actors, especially Sly. People can knock Sly all they want as an actor, but the guy was nominated for an Oscar back in the day for Rocky. You look at Lockup, you look at Copland. Did a damn good job in those. Arnold knew who he was, knew what kind of guy to sell as a product, embraced it, and also led more of that testosterone fuel along with Sly that we men like and enjoyed back in the day, and I do today. Sadly, in the realm of movies, we don't find a lot of that today unless you watch a John Wick film or such. I mean, you look at Vin Diesel's filmography. You can maybe get some merit from A Man Apart. Acting-wise, he did a good one called Find Me Guilty. And I think Vin should do more movies like that. But Vin Diesel, he just does not know how to pick a quality film or script to save his life 9 times out of 10. Just with every Pitch Black, he's got 3 Last Witch Hunters. Or 4 Bloodshots. Even like Riddick was disappointing, the last Riddick film. And I don't know if Vin Diesel just either doesn't want to embrace or doesn't know who he wants to be. Does he want to be the badass action star of yesteryear, or does he not want to be? And you think about Vin Diesel nowadays, all he has is the Fast and Furious films. Why do you think he's there up? We're going to Fast 10 now, and Vin is still around. Because he has nowhere else to go. Sound like Officer and Gentleman. You got nowhere else to go. And The Rock is playing it safe with these family-friendly cookie-cutter movies because he did try a couple R-rated films. I liked Doom, but it didn't do well. Faster was a very lame movie. Not all of them going to be great hits. I mean, Arnold, I'm not big on Raw Deal. I like the ending, but the whole film I'm not big on. They're not all 100% winners, but I'd rather see The Rock and Vin Diesel try more for that than this cookie cutter shit they're doing nowadays. Back in the day, I didn't feel Arnold and Sly were doing a lot of cookie cutter stuff. I mean, were there flaws? Sure. Rhinestone with Dolly Parton. But they seem a lot more good than bad. Stallone, either there were projects he took for the money, but I still felt he put his heart into it, whether it be Over the Top. I thought he did a good job as a solid father and son story. Lock Up, I think he did one of his better performances. Cobra, fucking badass. R-rated. And you don't get that a lot with The Rock and Vin Diesel nowadays. Like I said, The Rock, he's a guy who's overexposed. Everywhere you turn, it seems like he's there. Dwayne Johnson. He has his TV show, Little Rock. He did Jungle Cruise. He did, Fast and Furious, the Hobbs and Shaw, Black Adam. Maybe it'll be another future DC films. He's Secret Life of Pets. He's the voice of, I forget who he's, I think it's him and Kevin Hart doing the voice in that. Voices. I think it seems like everywhere you turn, you're becoming like Adam Sandler, Dwayne Johnson. You're becoming overexposed, and then the stuff you're exposing people to is not up to par. And I do think, despite what others want to say, that Stallone and Arnold, not all the time, but I think more times than not, were more selective. Like, look at Arnold in his heyday. He was pretty smart business-wise on what kind of films to do. The Terminator, to films like Commando, to films like Predator, and Total Recall, and True Lies, and knew what directors he should try to work with. John McTiernan, Paul Verhoeven, James Cameron. This guy that kind of knew what he was doing in that fat. And against Stallone, I think he helps himself where he is a writer. He likes to rework. I think a lot of people behind the scenes complain about that because he would take scripts and rewrite them to his own way of speaking. Because of his affliction when he was a baby, before he was born, some forceps hit the nerve, and that's why Stallone has that crooked mouth. Because the nerve that was damaged. So that's why he talks like this. Not Stallone's fault. It's what happened when he was a baby. What's he supposed to do? So him taking control in that aspect, and sadly and unfairly, a lot of his films didn't do well that were not Rocky and Rambo. Cobra should have done a lot better. Over the Top should have done a lot better. Lock Up should have done a lot better. I don't know what to tell you. Underrated films, bad timing, audiences just weren't having it for some reason at that point. I can't have the answer. I don't know. But because he was writing and rewriting, and I think at that time he had a bit of a handle on what made an action film or any type of film work. Last few years, I don't know, but back to the day, yes, same with Arnold. I think Arnold knew how to utilize himself. I think The Rock, he's just, okay, will this be a hit? This will be a hit. He's trying to do the Arnold, as in trying to do the business sense of, I think this will be a hit. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to this. But Arnold seems like he, knew that people want to see more of the R-rated machismo bravado. So it didn't seem goofy, or it didn't seem as kid-friendly. And The Rock, you look at The Rock, you look at how he was in wrestling and how full force he would go in these rants and how he made fun of people. And you kind of wanted to see that part of his character in these films, and that's not really the case. It's just smiles and or Black Adam. Just even though it's a more violent movie, it's still, you know, PG-13. And it feels like they take less of a risk. Stallone, despite his flaws or despite his losses, he took a risk. You know, doing Lockup was a risk. Doing, hell, even, Cliffhanger at that time was a risk for him. He wasn't a viable box office star at that time. But taking this risk, and that risk sometimes do pay off. Either in the long run, I think Lockup is still a solid, underrated film. Cliffhanger worked very well at that time and still a damn classic to this day. I just don't see Vin Diesel taking risks. And then the ones he does, it's just poor choices. I just looked at The Last Witch Hunter and Bloodshot Babylon AD. I'm like, Jesus Christ, Vin. Are you picking these, or is someone you know picking these? Are they picking them blindfolded? Or are they picking them like picking a nose? What are you doing? So I'm talking for 60 minutes. I'm like, have I made an actual constructive point? Not really. Just like the answer is easy. Sly and Arnold are better because they made a lot better fucking movies. A lot more badass movies that felt like the balls on my hair grew a few more inches after watching them. Just felt like a man. Felt like a badass. While if I watch The Rock, the crock of shit, it just seems more like a candy ass. And if I watch a new Vin Diesel film, I'd rather play a fucking diesel engine roar in my brain 24/7. Or get run over by a diesel. Or get Kevin Nash back as Diesel and do a fucking so that Vin could wake up. I think of the four, I think Stallone is the best actor. I think Arnold was the smartest businessman, especially of his day. The Rock, and hey, The Rock and Vin, I do like their potential. Like The Rock, I enjoy Race to Witch Mountain, even though it's a family film. I enjoyed, what was it? The Rundown. Vin Diesel, I mentioned I liked the first Pitch Black. Find Me Guilty. I did a family film, didn't mind The Pacifier. You want to do a family film or two, that's fine. Arnold did that well with Kindergarten Cop and Twins. But then you keep doing it and it's just, when you see The Rock as the Tooth Fairy, or the 85th time you hear Vin Diesel as Groot, I'm Groot, I'm Groot, I'm Groot. It's like we take you a little bit less seriously when you're trying to be a badass next time in a neutered PG-13 film made by people that don't really know how to exhibit macho badassness because either they haven't written that stuff before, they haven't lived it, they haven't thought of it, they don't have the experience of it, and you're in an era where there's a lot of cookie-cutter PG-13 CGI horse shit. And you go, well, how do they know? What experience do they have? Do you think a lot of these films are the same guys that grew up with these films that me and you love? Like, do you think the people directing the last three Dwayne "The Croc" Johnson's movies were big fans of fucking Hard Target or The Last Boy Scout or Cliffhanger or any of that shit? No. The Rock is overexposed. He needs to take a fucking break for a couple years. And I want to see him do a bit more of these like badass Arnold type of movies. Vin Diesel, And that's the sad thing, is that if they went to their potential, I think Vin Diesel could have been the new Stallone, and The Rock could have been the new Arnold, and you could have had a glory days where it was Sly versus Arnold, now Vin versus The Rock, and just Vin, like Stallone, has that type of voice and could be that badass. And which Pitch Black, that could remind me a bit of Rambo, that type of character. While The Rock has that sense of humor, throwing out one-liners like Arnold did. But they didn't want to. I think early on, those guys didn't really want to be that. At least Vin didn't. Because that's why he didn't automatically do a sequel to Fast and Furious. Paul Walker did Too Fast, Too Furious. He didn't automatically do a sequel to Triple X. He did. Ice Cube did that. And those two guys tried to do other stuff, and you have either a film like Snatch with The Rock, or an Babylon AD with Vin, and they didn't really work out well. Whether poor choice of directors, or bad scripts, or not living up to its full potential, not going for broke, and the escapism, kick-assness that it could and should have. And to be fair with The Rock, the Rundown Sally should have been a big hit, should have led to more of those type of films, and it didn't do well. And hey, maybe that's why The Rock looked at it and said, you know what, I did an R-rated film like Doom, I did a fun kick-ass movie like The Rundown, those films bombed, but if I do this film like G.I. Joe 2, it's a big hit. I do the Jumanji sequels, they're big hits. So I get the business side of what The Rock is doing, but nowadays, even that's not working out for him. And again, there are people that are just getting sick and tired of seeing him, and it seems like he's playing the same type of guy. And like I said, I know I'm going all over the place. Sly and Arnold, in their heyday, to me had, aside from a couple, TTS film after TTS film after TTS film. In one year you had Rambo vs. Blood Part 2, and you had Commando. You have Predator, and you got Over the Top. You got this movie and this movie. It's like I could watch The Running Man in '87, or I could watch Tango and Cash in '89. I could or I could get Red Heat with Buddy Cop, or Tango and Cash with Buddy Cop. I could get Stallone needed to do a sci-fi film in the 80s. But he did do one in the 90s, so you got Total Recall, you got Demolition Man. You got The Running Man, you got Cliffhanger. I mean, they both, to me, just exhibit kick-ass classic action films. The Rock and Vin don't really have that category, that catalog. I like I said, I enjoy some of the Fast and Furious films, but at the same time, those aren't films I really rewatch a lot. You see them once or twice and they're fun, but I'm more than likely to go back and rewatch a Commando or Cliffhanger or Lock Up or Predator than even Fast 5, which I like. The time frame they were in, the way the directors and the filmmaking and the effects and lack of CG and bigger than life bravado and escapism and heroism and carnage and R-rated and not worried about PC, not worried about what the families think, not chasing the superhero thing or this and that. I mean, you just say Stallone tried to do it in the 90s with Judge Dredd, maybe because he saw the success of years before Batman, and then they're doing these films like The Crow and Dick Tracy, and Stallone's like, I'm going to do that, and they didn't really work out that well. But yeah, Sly and Arnold definitely have, like I said, just a better track record. I did Arnold in his heyday knew a bit more of how to utilize his presence, and Sly in his heyday was a pretty good writer director, and yeah, he might have had an ego like a lot of these guys do, but he still put his all in a lot of these projects that still hold up to this day for me. I still love Tango and Cash, I still love Cobra, Cliffhanger, and Demolition Man, so. And their films just felt like they had better production value, better stories, just more exciting and more fun. I mean, who gives a shit about Last Witch Hunter, and who gives a shit about fucking San Andreas, Cookie Cutter? Well, I see more Cookie Cutter films in their filmography than I do Sly and Arnold, despite, the last 10 years. But that's just me.